Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a He Did It edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and he did do it. Last night, Jacob deGrom was announced the winner of the 2018 National League Cy Young Award, a well-deserving honor for an unbelievable season. I want to talk about a couple of moments that stood out for me this year for Jake. And I also want to talk about the voting and talk about what's next on the show as the winter creeps along. For Jacob deGrom, after pitching such a dominant season, it made sense that he won in a dominant fashion. 29 out of 30 first place votes went to Jacob deGrom. That one holdout was a reporter from San Diego who put Max Scherzer ahead of deGrom for first place, which is nonsense, but whatever, to each their own. Clearly this person is wrong, and he knows it. And he has to live with that for the rest of his life, and that's that. So deGrom's Cy Young slots him up in Mets lore as the fourth pitcher to be awarded the Cy Young. Of course, Tom Seaver, he won it 3 times. Gooden, R.A. Dickey, and now Jacob deGrom. The last Cy Young Award winner was R.A. Dickey, and he was traded away not long after he won the award. Sandy Alderson extended Dickey to a 1-year deal and promptly traded him to the Blue Jays for Travis d'Arnaud and Noah Syndergaard and Wilmer Bucera, and sent Josh Tolley and Mike Nickias with Dickey to Toronto. I don't think that's going to happen with Jacob deGrom. I do expect that the next thing we're going to hear about as far as actual news relating to the Mets is Jacob deGrom's signing an extension. I'd love to see him get a 5-year extension for some obscene amount of money, which he 1,000,000% deserves to get. Frankly, I would give Jake the money just for what he's given us over the last few years. He was one of the few bright spots of the 2018 season, who was consistent from start to finish. He was that shining star for us. He deserves the money. So let's figure out how to pay the man. Let's keep him in orange and blue for the next 5+ seasons. That would be wonderful. Talking about this season and deGrom's dominance, I want to talk about 3 moments that, for me, stand out from 2018. The first one was relatively early in the season. The Mets were playing the Phillies, and it was the Jacob deGrom 1-inning, 45-pitch start, where he continued his streak of not allowing a run in the first 6 innings or whatever it was. It was some streak that he had to continue per start. I don't remember what the exact number was, but one of my favorite things to watch as a baseball fan is watching a pitcher who doesn't have his best stuff put together a quality outing. And while that was not a quality outing for deGrom, he kept the Phillies off the board despite them really breathing down his neck for 45 pitches. It was as tense a first inning as I think I can recall ever seeing. And that deGrom battled through it. It took him 45 pitches, but he battled through it and didn't give up a run. That sets the stage for what he was able to do all season long, because he is so unflappable out there on the mound. No matter what seems to happen, he just shrugs it off and does his job. And if you listen to Mike Silva and his podcast, it's really excellent. If you don't listen to it, you should. But if you listen to what Mike Silva has always said about Matt Harvey and comparing him to Jacob deGrom, Harvey wore his emotions on his sleeve and let things bother him too visibly and too clearly. Whereas deGrom is just almost like a machine out there, where he's just so laser focused on the task at hand. And it lends itself to why he never let this season bother him. He never let the fact that the Mets didn't score runs bother him. He was an absolute machine on the mound. And that 45-pitch first inning against the Phillies was the first sign of it. The second one was at the end of August, and it was the Mets and the Cubs. And I was out of town. I was in Greenville, Tennessee for this game. And I remember walking to Taco Bell, which was right next to my hotel, and watching the game on my way over to the hotel, watching it on my phone, and just being so unbelievably nervous for deGrom as he just absolutely gutted through an incredible performance to keep the Cubs at bay. And we're talking about the Cubs here. We're talking about a really good offensive team, and deGrom was able to keep them at bay and get stronger as the outing went on. I mean, he pitched 8 innings that night and was as dominant as he was the entire season. And you're going to hear me say that a lot. I think I've said it 9 times already. And it's just the reality. That's just what Jake was in 2018. And the final moment for me was his last start of the season, where, again, I was out of town. I was in Norfolk, Virginia. I was watching the game on my phone in my hotel there. And when deGrom notched his 1,000th career strikeout, I think it became his 11th double-digit strikeout game of the season, besting the Braves, another really quality offensive team. That was a moment of pure elation for me. I was so happy when Jacob deGrom succeeded this year, and when the announcement was made last night, I felt like I was winning an award. And I clearly I didn't win anything, but it felt like I was part of the award that was being handed over. Part of it was coming to me, like a reward for being a Mets fan. And that, to me, is why I think Mets fans are the greatest fans in the world, because we don't have 27 rings to hang our hats on. Right? We don't have the 975 back-to-back World Series appearances to brag about. But we do have moments like this, and because, unfortunately, they're few and far between, seemingly, they just mean that much more. And it lets us appreciate them that much more. And that's sort of how I feel about this award. I just appreciate what Jake did for the Mets this year, and I look forward to seeing him doing that for the next 5 years or even more. So I think, as I said, the next order of business for the Mets will be to extend Jacob deGrom, get him that contract, get him locked up, and then go to work to fixing the rest of this team. And I'm of the belief that there's not, I don't want this to come off the way I'm going to say this, but there's not as much work to do as you might think, considering that the Mets finished with a record so poor last year. I want to talk about over the next couple of days, probably bleeding into early next week, what I think the Mets are going to start doing as the winter meetings approach and the awards are all handed out tonight. It's worth mentioning that Christian Yelich and Mookie Betts will get their respective MVP awards for the National League and American League. But once all of this is behind us, we can get down to business to talking about how Brodie Van Wagenen is going to fix this team and how he's going to put his stamp on the 2019 team and beyond. And I'm looking forward to that. I have some ideas about what I would do, and I want to talk about them over the next couple of days. So that's my little teaser for what's coming next. Probably Friday of this week, which is tomorrow. I'll probably come back tomorrow and do a little bit of sort of a follow-up on this teaser and set the stage for what my outline will look like for building a contender in 2019. And then early next week, before Thanksgiving, I'll have another video where I'll start to go into that in a little bit greater detail. So until that time, I appreciate your watching the video. As always, it's a pleasure. Follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met. And as always, let's go Mets.